Welcome, everyone, and welcome to our exciting guest today, Kimberly Wiefling from the Silicon Valley, from the heart of the Silicon Valley. We've met with Kimberly, I guess, two years, three years ago must have been. Time flies, feels like a lifetime, feels like we've known each other from very early ages. She's my big sis, my big sister. And we were both speakers on an event in Poland, in Warsaw. And I remember very vividly when I had my keynote on the stage, she was sitting front row and she was looking me in the eye. I said, what's this? A connection happening here? There is a lot of energy flying. And since then we've engaged. We had next day a workshop. We shared a taxi and a beautiful friendship from my perspective appeared. Then she invited me at her home in the Silicon Valley, and I had the honor to live in her office. And I was amazed. I mean, all over the walls of her office, there were posters, not posters, but testimonials and photos of the workshops she did. So there were people saying, Kimberly, you changed my life, and like 5 exclamation marks. And, you know, teams very exciting, very excited doing the workshop and in a completely different state, emotional state, physical state. So I said, this lady must have the secret sauce for engaging people, inspiring people, you know, bringing great results. And here we are today and having with us Kimberly live. And we would explore on the secrets of engaging leadership. You know, how can you engage people, drive change, drive innovation, which is so typical for the Silicon Valley. So we have exciting guests and like an hour ahead to explore various exciting subjects. So welcome, Kimberly. It's my pleasure. And please tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate being here. Kimberly Wiefling. I live in amazing Silicon Valley, California, where we call failures prototypes. I've been a consultant for the last 20 years after working at Hewlett Packard for a decade. And then I worked at 3 failed startups in 3 years. Again, a prototype experiment. And when the dot-com bust happened in 2001, I said, forget about this job security. I'll consult. I started with product development lifecycle. Then I got into the so-called touchy-feely crap. That's what my engineering friends call leadership, team effectiveness, organizational culture, all the things that are causing teams to fail, Peter, as you very well know. Yes. Touchy-feely crap. In other words, the soft skills. I call them the human skills, and it's what's causing failure in global teams. And about 13 years ago, I started working primarily with Japanese companies that were globalizing. I'm sure you know, Japan economy is flat, population is shrinking. If you're a Japanese company and you want to grow your revenues, your business, you got to go outside of Japan. Then you've got to hire crazy non-Japanese people like me and learn to work with us. And so in the US, people say, oh, Kimberly, you're hyperactive. But in Japan, I'm like an Osaka comedian with great passion. So somehow it works. And we work with people from all over the world who work for Japanese companies. And you know very well, Peter, because you work with us too.
Yes, yes. No, fantastic. Thank you. And you partly answer my second question. I know you are a big why person, you know, why we do what we do. That gives us energy. If we fail, if we face problems and obstacles, usually the strong why can give us wind in ourselves to overcome. So tell us why you do what you do. I know even, you know, the Japanese is asking 5 times why you do. And then when you discover again why do you put so much passion and energy in what you do?
Oh, Peter, I'm so glad you asked that. It really touches my heart. I have always, since 1995, I had this crazy idea that I wanted to transform planet Earth for the better. Now, looking back, it's so crazy, right? It's ridiculous to think that I could somehow change all of planet Earth for the better. But then I started to realize that working with Japanese companies, Some of them do business in 110 countries. Some of them, we get people in the room together, 50 people from 15 different countries. And when they are all together, Peter, they don't have a problem with each other. They don't care what their governments are doing and fighting.
Mhm.
We can transform planet Earth, one planet, one people, by shifting the mindset of people who work for globalizing companies
Mhm.
to understand. And these are crossing borders and boundaries of every kind. And those relationships are far stronger than
Mhm.
any political or governmental challenges. And I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
When an earthquake happens somewhere in the world, all of the people who were in a workshop together all write to each other on WhatsApp or line and say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
They care
Yeah.
for each other, Peter. We're
Absolutely.
transforming planet Earth for
Yeah.
the better,
Absolutely.
crossing borders and boundaries of every kind
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
spite of government
Yeah.
challenges.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I call power teams, virtual power teams. This is not just a group of people, but you have a people that care for each other, which know each other as human beings, not just as professionals and experts bringing particular expertise, which have a strong sense of purpose. I call it nucleus of the atom that
Yes.
holds strong gravity to the nucleus. So what you describe is a great example of a power team. So that's why we click so well together. We both on the journey to create as much power teams, regardless of time zones, political belongings, and so on. Oh,
Right on.
fantastic. Now, let's jump into, we are in the COVID times, COVID-19, and many people are, have to force to do home office, forced to do social distancing, could be quite depressive. But it is a pandemic. It's a global pandemic that our generation didn't have. I mean, in the past, there have been several pandemics. Now we have all the data and so on. Now, you've been talking about another pandemic, which was before COVID, the global pandemic of disengaging organization. And I know engaging employees can make a huge difference. So tell me a little bit about this other pandemic in the business world, about disengaging employees, and what can we do about it?
Well, I'm glad you asked. And I'll tell you first, I'm a physicist by education. I have
Mhm.
a master's in physics and a bachelor's degree in chemistry and physics. So I take kind of a scientific approach to these things. And I love data. So I found this data a few years back from MIT,
Mhm.
Sloan Management Journal. And it said they did a study of global teams, 70 global teams. And they found that the top four causes of failure, wait for it, because as technology people, we would hope it was technology. Nope.
Yes.
Number one cause of failure in global teams was they failed to build trusting relationship.
Yes.
And how big was the failure? 82% of teams in their study said they weren't successful at being a team.
Mhm.
82%, Peter. And fully one third of the team said they failed to achieve their goals. It is failure on a massive scale.
Mhm.
And I called it the global pandemic
Mhm.
of dysfunctional organizations and disengaged employees.
Mhm.
And the causes were they didn't build trusting relationships. Number two cause was communication. And I thought, okay, it's language, it's culture. Yeah, a little bit. But a lot of it was they didn't have ways to solve problems together and they didn't have ways to make decisions together. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you can speak to that from your virtual power teams.
Yeah, yeah. So disengaging now. I remember when we were in Poland and when we had the presentation, and not very modest, but we were on the top score of the audience. They do always the score. But then next year, I remember I approached him again because I loved the event so much. And I said, can I join you as a speaker? Say, we never repeat speaker. I mean, if you speak 1 year, we just do one exception. One exception only, and this exception is called Kimberly Wiefling because she did so much engagement with the audience. They love her. They want to have her again. So tell us, what is the secret of an engaging presentation or an engaging workshop? How can you really make the audience so engaged that they love you in the end?
Well, even when I'm asked to do a keynote, I don't lecture. One-way communication is not effective at engaging people.
Mhm.
So, what I say and what my team promises is this: if you can replace our experience with a video, we have failed you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is even a podcast. It's like, okay, great, they can watch it. But if I'm in a keynote, I will say, okay, everybody, watch me carefully. Make the symbol for money with your hand. Okay, the symbol that they use in Japan for money is this. Okay, now please place it on your chin.
Yeah.
And then everybody puts it on their cheek. All right. And so I got the whole audience of 800 people in Bulgaria doing cheek when I said chin.
Yes.
And, you know, or else I'll have them do something like, okay, cross your arms, cross your arms. Come on, Peter, do it with me. Now, how does it feel? Pretty comfortable, right? Now cross them the other way.
Difficult.
Now that's how change feels. We're going to change. And when you change, you're going to feel uncomfortable. When you feel uncomfortable, it's not wrong. It just feels uncomfortable. It's different. And when you feel uncomfortable, you're getting your money's worth out of this workshop. So I want you to shout, woohoo, we're changing. So this is kind of what it's like. And it just goes crazy from there, you know, lots of props, lots of things to engage people. I got the rubber chicken at all times, a lot of listening. So I don't call it, I don't even call it a keynote, or I call it workshop. And learning labs.
Learning
because,
labs.
And finally, I'll just say this. If knowing how to do something were enough, we'd all be rich and thin. All right. Reading a book about exercise won't get you in good shape. You got to go to the gym. And when I get a chance to work with people, I don't read them a book about how to become a great leader and a great team. I take them to the leadership learning lab and the teamwork gym.
Absolutely. No, amazing. We've done some gigs together. I know it's incredible. And again, the testimonial speaks for themselves. But as you say, activate all the senses, make them experience, make them feel it, interact with each other. I've been carrying your suitcase, and I know I'm a world champion in discus throw, so I can lift heavy things, but not your suitcase. Full with props, all these things you carry along the world.
Thank you.
So you've touched upon trust with pandemic. Apparently, it's the number one reason for failure of global teams. So give her your insights. How can we build trust actually? And now, particularly now that we have the social distancing and many of our engaging opportunities are just online and virtual, how can we build trust?
Oh, come on. You're the expert at that. You're the virtual power teams guy. Give us your tips.
I can answer the question my way, but I like to see your view about the trust. And I know you have this concept, of fail, because COVID brought us a lot of us in a fear state. We fear for ourselves or our loved ones. Some people lost a dear person. And then the more fear you feel, the more your immune system gets weak, and the more likely you are to get COVID or to have a more severe impact. So tackling fear is key. Now, how to maximize trust and minimize fear? What would be your take?
Well, Peter, as I'm sure you know, one of the things we need to do first, build relationships. We have to create psychological safety. Now, I learned from you something about how to share our life stories. And what we do is we share the life journey. I tell people, hey, introduce yourselves to each other in a breakout room. Start at birth. Give your 2-minute version of your life story. And I even have people draw a graph of this. And what they find out, even sharing for 2 minutes, either verbally or by also drawing their life journey, they find out they have many things in common. And that is the foundation of trust, to build relationships and discover what we share in common. I strongly believe that even people who are having challenges with each other, if they would just listen to each other for a few minutes, they would discover points in common. And of course, after building psychological safety, then you can start to build trust, because people can make themselves vulnerable. I mean, why do you think I have all these crazy props, right?
Yes.
Oh, I have a feather boa.
Yeah.
Oh, I have these crazy glasses, right? It's not because I'm a crazy person. I'm a physicist. I'm a consultant. I go all over the world. I do strategic planning. I do design thinking and innovation. This is creating a playful environment where
Yes.
people can be vulnerable safely.
Uh,
And that is the foundation of trust. And I'd love to hear your take on it more.
yes. Yes. No, my my listeners know about my way to build trust, but it's pretty much, I wouldn't now go in detail, but discovering the commonalities, as you said, that builds trust. Trust, I say, is a function of two things: personality, how deep and how well they know as human beings, not just an expert, and also
Yes.
professional competence in this particular field. That for this, working on your strengths, on your expertise, I can fully rely on you. And these both elements, they need time, and they take time and space, and you as a manager need to allow the right time and space, create a psychological safe space, show vulnerability yourself, lead by example so people can, and then you build trust. But it takes time and takes like a fine fine feeling facilitation, and sometimes taking yourself as a as an example. So yeah, you wanted
Oh,
to add something.
well, you're so right. There are two components of trust at least. One is, can the other person fulfill their promises to me?
Mhm.
And then the other, will they?
Yes.
So if you trust a fish to climb a tree,
Yeah.
that's just a mistake,
Yeah.
right? And many managers are in positions where they put their people, they put a fish in the position of climbing a tree or try to get a stone to swim. That is a recipe for failure. But if we can and we will, then we can build the trusting relationships. Well, I just start off by creating some psychological safety through playfulness.
Mhm.
And I even get the people in Germany to
Mhm.
wear the crazy glasses, to wear the hats, Peter. And
Yes.
you live in Germany. Sometimes it's not so easy, except during
Yeah.
certain playful seasons.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about this. The fear and the reasons, and you have this fail method, which is like a good system to discover what holds us and what can we do instead.
Right. I work with people from over 50 different countries,
Yeah.
and I studied some neuroscience and how human brains work. And
Mm.
it's amazing that we seem to fall into the same traps for our brains, no matter where we grew up, no matter where we were born. And all over the world, and especially in Japan, there is a fear of failure. So if you're afraid to ever fail, then you have to be really careful what you start.
Mhm.
So we have to overcome that. In Japan, failure is fatal. Okay. Nobody really likes to fail. So what I had to do with my Japanese colleagues, I said, hey, in this workshop, you must make at least 3 mistakes a day or you fail the workshop. And
Yes.
they're like, eh? I have to make mistakes or I fail. So their brain kind of shorts out. So we take this approach of take necessary risks, because I live in Silicon Valley. We build success on a pile of mistakes,
Yes.
learn from mistakes,
Mm.
and fail forward in the direction of your goals. So that's the one approach for overcoming the fear of failure.
Mhm.
And then, as you well know, human brains prefer not to plan.
Mhm.
Aversion to planning is epidemic.
Yeah.
You say go, and people just start and they work on how. They don't know why, they
Mhm.
don't know who they're doing it for or what exactly is success, but they're excited to be in action.
Yes.
And this is the aversion to planning that project managers all over the world have to deal with. The next one is an instinct to compete. If
Mm.
you put people in a situation, uh, like virtually, we play rock,
Yeah.
paper, scissors.
Yes.
So do you know how to play rock, paper, scissors? All right,
Yes.
let's do it. Ready?
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, go. Okay, so I rock, beats, scissors.
That beats
Now
it.
I put them into breakout rooms and say, play rock, paper, scissors, and you're going to get $1 million cash for every time you beat your opponent. And they play and they try to win. Hey, all they need to do is stop, Think, organize, plan. Here's another one of my buttons. Stop, think, organize, plan. Why are we doing rock, paper, scissors? To earn money. Who is involved? Me and my partner, not my opponent. What exactly is success? Oh, getting more money. Measure of success, more money. Peter, why don't I make a rock with one hand and paper with the other, and you do the opposite?
Yes.
Go ahead, do the opposite, my friend. And then we can get
Sense of
$1 million
zero.
each every second.
Exactly.
But nobody thinks of doing this. So the instinct to compete and play win, lose, or
Instead of
even
collaborate.
lose, lose.
Mhm.
People come out with zero, nothing from the whole experience. This is so rampant in our brains.
Yes.
And finally, I will have to use my small chicken. I love my chickens. I always
Yeah.
have chickens. The learned helplessness. I'll just show you what I do in every workshop. And
Yes.
you know the answer. So
Mhm.
I drop the chicken like this. And
Mhm.
I ask people, what caused this chicken to fall?
Yes.
And you know, they always say, it was gravity, Kimberly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gravity, really? Oh, the Earth's fault. Or some people say, oh, the chicken didn't fly. Seriously?
Yes.
It was blaming the chicken, blaming the earth, blaming gravity. Hey, there's always gravity.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you want to be a virtual power team or a leader of a virtual power team, you better say,
Yeah.
hey, Kimberly,
I drop
I
it.
let go.
Yes.
There's always gravity.
Yeah.
Sure, but we don't use that as an excuse. Hold on to the chicken, baby.
Yeah. It's within your powers.
So that we have overcome
Yeah.
fear of failure, avoiding planning, instinct to compete, and learned helplessness. We have got to help our teams overcome those things because it's wired into our brains from birth.
Yeah. Yeah. Great, great insights in a very engaging way. You know, on the podcast, listeners will not be able to to see all your body language, but I think it's expressive enough. The YouTube viewers will have you 150%. Now, let's look a little bit at innovation because you live in the Silicon Valley, and this is the place where most of the innovation happens, particularly in the digital space. I mean, Germany is still doing in the engineering space not so bad, but on the digital, Silicon Valley is ruling. So, what are the secrets? What do you think is the secret of success for innovation, and how can you make your organization more innovative? What would be your take?
Well, we're really lucky in Silicon Valley, Peter,
Mhm,
because the first advantage we have is we have this diversity.
mhm,
I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. The part called Redwood City in Silicon Valley is just south of me. And we have over 50% of people who live here don't speak English at home.
yeah.
We also have a highly educated population.
Mhm,
Over 60% of us have a bachelor's degree. We went to university. We were so lucky.
mhm,
And 20% have a master's degree or above. And the other thing we have is a lot of people with a lot of money that they've been so fortunate to make from their entrepreneurial adventures, and they're willing to invest in these startups and in experiments. So we've got kind of this critical mass of diversity, education, money, and universities like Stanford University is here. And there's the spirit of take necessary risks,
mhm.
try it, experiment, prototype, fail forward. And you can kick a shrubbery and an entrepreneur rolls out from under it, you know? So I am the most boring person in Silicon Valley. I am the most unsuccessful person in Silicon Valley. We're just so lucky to be swimming in this ecosystem.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
think that makes it really
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
The other thing that we do is we have a framework.
Mhm.
So you've been here. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's the point actually, because conditions are important, and you have a great basis, the great foundation. Diversity is a key element, as you mentioned, because some people neglect it, and actually, particularly in Germany, there was some, although they lack expert resources, there was some unwillingness on knowing how to integrate people that are different from them and to make more juice and make more creative effort. So diversity is key, but if you don't have the right condition, you live in Afghanistan or in India or in Eastern Europe, where I'm coming from, what can you do in order to make your organization more innovative?
Oh, Peter, I was doing business last month with people from Pakistan and Bangladesh.
Mhm,
As long as you're willing to get up at 3 a.m., you can do business with anybody all over the world now.
mhm. Absolutely.
Truly.
But how can
And
you mentioned framework? You said you have a framework, and now you're good on the what means good design thinking. Can you have your
yes,
own adaptation and all these works that you did about the pragmatic project management and so on? How
yes,
can you make a team? How can you instill the innovative organizational culture? You mentioned a few things about fail forward,
yes,
encourage failures and so on. What
right.
else?
Okay, so of course we live near Stanford University. I can see the Stanford Tower from my house. That's the birthplace of design thinking.
Yes.
And design thinking framework is very powerful. They have a lot of strange words that describe it, but I have converted it to what I call scrappy design thinking.
Yes.
And I'll be happy to share my articles that I wrote about that process. But basically, it boils down to stop, think, organize, and plan.
Mhm.
Big why, purpose of what you're doing. Big who, stakeholder analysis. Go and see your customers and other stakeholders in the ecosystem
Mhm.
and observe what they do, what they need, what the pain points are. And then create a clear big what. What exactly would success be? I like to transport people to the future.
Yeah.
For example, we recently worked with a group of 40 people from a global company, and we said, let's pretend it's 2026 and it's your 100th year anniversary of your company. Who's at the party? What are they saying? And what are they so delighted about having been involved with you? And then you can create a clear, vivid image of the future. Now, once everybody gets that clear in their head, as clear as sunlight, then they can start saying, all right, what happened just before that celebration? How about the year before, the 2 years prior, the 3 years prior? Working backwards, thinking from the future. And then finally, we can say, hey, what should we do this week, this month, this quarter? That is a framework for making success. Now, of course, people have an aversion to planning, and this is planning. But if you have the discipline to do what's required, as you know from the project management world, you can have a double chance of success.
Mm.
Instead of about 1/3 success, maybe 2/3. There's still going to be failures, but then you can learn from those and build your success on a foundation of experience.
Amazing. Amazing. Thanks for explaining it so vividly and so emotionally. Love to have you here as a guest. Now, I know from you, exciting. Exciting is maybe you can tell us a bit the story, but I know on the workshops that we did together, people are excited and it's everything is very exciting. And that makes the workshop memorable, that makes the learning, that makes the transfer to work much, much, much better. So tell us about this exciting concept. And I have another question to tell us what is your most exciting experience with a global team? But these are two questions. But explain the concept of exciting.
Well, so long ago, when I first started teaching, I've always been teaching like physics. I started teaching algebra at University of Phoenix. And University of Phoenix is famous for not allowing lecture.
Mhm.
And they teach something called adult learning theory, which has been known for decades. People do not learn from lecture. Hey, I want to lose weight. So I go to a lecture on how to lose weight. Eat less, exercise more. Yeah, I know. Knowing how changes nothing. There's a book that was published at Stanford University by Bob Sutton about the knowing doing gap. What you need to do is to get people engaged. And so, in order to make the workshop lead to changes in thinking, changes in behavior, changes in communication, we get them to practice by engaging them in what's called adult learning theory, which is experiential,
Mhm.
interactive. We do games, exercises, activities, there's discussions. If you come to a workshop where we're doing our work, maybe I talk for 5, maybe 10 minutes maximum out of every hour. Then I say, go do this exercise. Okay, what happened? Hey, go to the flip charts and write it down. Now get ready and make a presentation. Start with your team, name and action. Exciting! You must not be boring because people, if they're not paying attention, if they're not engaged and interacting, what are they doing? Hey, they're checking their email, they're texting somebody, they're thinking about something else. Oh no, they've got to be fully 100% committed to the experience so that they can change who they are and what they do when they go back to the so-called real world.
Absolutely. And you have this, you code it in a movement. So there is a particular movement. Now we are like half size visible, but maybe you can show it. Yes. Exciting.
Exciting. Come on, Peter. Exciting.
Yes, exciting. Let's explain it for the podcast listeners, how it looks like. How do you do it?
Yeah, you raise your right hand up to the sky and your left hand down to the ground, and you have a big wide-eyed look on your face and you say, exciting together. Now, Peter,
And
we do this with groups of even quiet, shy engineering people. We'll do exciting.
yes. Tell me, I know it's memorable. And I remember when you met somebody that was on your workshop like 10 years ago, you met him at the airport and how he greeted you.
Exciting. Actually, it's really interesting. Well, first of all, there's psychology behind this, right? If you raise your hands above your head, you put a big smile on your face and you say, I feel sad. Yes. You can't feel sad. There's an incongruity. The way our bodies and our voices and our faces are affects how we think and feel. So we use the psychology of human brains to shift people into a state of higher activity and awareness. And I've been doing this workshop for, oh my God, over 10 years. And two people from two different companies that were in my workshops somehow met at a conference and were talking about this workshop. And they said, oh my God, you took a workshop? Was it with Kimberly Wiefling? And they said, yes. And so they discovered by accident that they had both been in my workshops from different companies, Peter. And they looked at each other and they said, exciting!
It's so much ingrained in the identity. You know? Once you have your work shock therapy, it lasts forever.
We say, yes. This is the Kimberly virus. There's no vaccine and there's no cure.
Yes. Fantastic.
In a way, some people think it's a little shocking. It's like, oh my God, it's a little terrifying. But it actually, I do what works. I tell people, I don't like to have fun, but the research clearly proves that when you're having fun and enjoying, you have 300% creativity. Absolutely. Compared to just seriousness.
Innovation, creativity, function, as you said, diversity, but the fun level, the excitement and the joy, brings the creative results. That's now, right. I've asked you this, what is your most exciting experience? You work with people in 50 countries, all over the world. What is the most exciting one? And the first one that comes to your mind or heart?
Well, so a lot of our programs are longer, like we'll spend 15 days over 6 months or 9 days over 3 months, working with groups of people on leadership and team effectiveness, organizational culture, project management, and things like design thinking and innovation. But at the end, they're working on real projects. And at the end, they present in front of their executives, often the CEO or president of a company and all the executive team. And often in Japan, of course, because I'm working quite often with Japanese companies. So the most exciting experience was I was working for a very conservative Japanese company, and we did a 3-month program. And at the end of the program, the 5 teams were presenting, and they do the team name and action, and they have costumes and props and things like that. And one team comes out, and they're all dressed as this singing group called AK-48. It's a girls singing group. So these men are all wearing skirts and long wigs, and they have naked legs, and they're standing there in front of their executives. And I'm like, no, I didn't tell them to do it. I didn't know, right? And so they come out as this team, because their name is AK-48, and they sing, Aitakata, 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 hey! And the executives are, sitting there bewildered, but interested. And they listen as they do their entire fairly technical presentation dressed as girls. And At the end, it's time for a Q&A. And one of the executives asks, what is your wig made out of? Because I think it was a polymer company, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
this one guy takes off his wig,
Mhm.
looks at the tag, puts it back on and says, it is my own hair. It's like, okay, it's even too crazy for me. But
Yeah,
when people are willing to take that kind of risk in
yes,
front of their executives,
yes,
that person is ready to lead their company into the future.
absolutely. We talked about vulnerability showing and the contagious effect and psychological safety. Amazing, but it's not overnight thing. I mean, I know on the
Ah,
workshops you encourage them every single day and single hour, and then make free failures and so on. So all this comes towards,
well,
yeah.
and let me just say that I get this takes time. That's why I don't like to just go do a 1 day workshop or 2 or 3 days. And I don't ever call what I do training. What we do is workshop therapy, learning labs to guide people on a journey to a new future where they can change how they act, how they communicate and think. ACT,
Yes.
act, communicate, and think. And we help them overcome those 4 causes of failure we talked about. And I think I didn't mention the 4 reasons teams fail.
Yep.
The third and fourth reasons are they don't have clear goals
Yes.
and they don't have alignment between individual and team goals. So they need time to practice this and
Mhm.
to get this integrated into their brain and to have the discipline to do it, especially when they're too busy. I like the story of the meditation teacher and the student comes and says, oh, I'm supposed to meditate a half an hour a day, but sometimes I'm too busy. What should I do? And the teacher says, oh, when you're too busy, do 1 hour a day.
Mhm.
And this is exactly what the really professional, capable leader says. When I'm too busy, that's when I need to stop, think, organize, and plan.
Yes.
That's when I need to ask big why, big who, big what, and before how, before go, when
Yes.
I'm too busy to do it, because that's what's required of a truly effective global leader.
Absolutely. And now with virtual power teams, short reference, we put a lot of emphasis. You mentioned the second 2 reasons from the top 4 reasons for failure. The last two are not clear goal and not aligned goals. We put a lot of emphasis to put the goal bottom up. And sometimes the managers shy away now in COVID, say, I don't see the people. How can we engage? Let me, just put the goals top down. I anyway know better.
Ah,
That would be, disaster in terms of motivating, engaging people. So we work out formats to set the goal bottom up, and then people, based on their strengths that we discover, they pick their goals, based on the strategic roadmaps that lead to the
right.
nucleus. So the listeners know a bit about the methodology, but it is key. Engage the people in the goal setting, make sure they work in their strength area, and so on.
Well, when you direct people, when you give them the goals, you tell them how to do it, and you instruct them, it's called infantilization. You're turning them into a tiny baby. And
Yes.
that's what feeds this learned helplessness where they feel like it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Gravity made it happen. It's not my responsibility. And
Yeah.
we have got to avoid thinking for people. We have got to avoid instructing hierarchy. Hierarchy builds this kind of dysfunctionality. We do an exercise where we have 3 levels of hierarchy
Mhm.
for 10 minutes. And in 10 minutes, half the teams fail to achieve their goals and everybody's unhappy, even the successful ones, because there's no personal responsibility and commitment and shared accountability for making things happen. Absolutely right, Peter. We've got to avoid
Mhm.
instructing. We have to truly invite participation from our teams.
Yes. What would be your number one advice? So people leading global teams. Now you work different cultures, and so global multicultural teams now forced to be even more virtual and collaborate more virtually. What would be your number one advice?
Well, number one advice is get a camera for your computer. I am actually working with some people who don't have a camera in their computer. And as you well know, communication is primarily visual and tone of voice. The words are a small part of the communication, and especially across language barriers. And then I would say, if you're going to work with people from different countries, pull up Google Translate and learn to say a few words in their language, or even copy and paste some words into the chat in their language. It is such a way to build some common ground, and it's very respectful also to be curious and to learn the other person's language. And when you are going to communicate, once you get the video going, if you have to use words, which we must, we've got to speak global English, people. We got to slow down, use simple words, short sentence, and pause.
Yes.
Once you know, because my colleagues in Japan tell me, even with a translator, they only understand 70 to 80% of the meaning.
Excellent. Buy your camera, speak global language, and respectful, remarks like translation. Very pragmatic tips from the experience of somebody like yourself. What do you read at the moment, or what do you listen to? How do you get currently? What do you get external inspiration from?
So I like getting Harvard Business Review, a daily list of their articles in my inbox, and I read the short snippets. And then if it's interesting, I go deeper. And recently I read about Bosch, a company that makes kitchen appliances, for example. And they started an innovation ecosystem where they would launch like 160 projects, and they would give some funding to 160 teams for 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, they evaluate how are they doing. And at the end of 3 months, they cut 70% of the projects. And then they would continue another 3 or 6 months, challenging, doing things that seem impossible but are merely difficult. And then after that evaluation, they cut another 70%. And in the end, only 14 out of 160 projects gets to market. This is something that I learned by just reading Harvard Business Review and picking out some interesting headlines. And this is something most companies are unwilling to do, to launch many, many projects and then kill most of them, and only getting the fruits that are able to grow in the marketplace. So what I focused on is, how do we do what seems impossible, but is merely difficult, and finally becomes inevitable because we can approach it. I mean, I was on a video call the other day where these executives were telling me, oh, this is not likely, this is unrealistic, this is impossible. And I tell them, everything seems impossible until your competitor does it. Then you say, oh, why didn't we think of that? Woohoo!
Rephrasing Nelson Mandela, but you said killing projects, and this is on the corporate perspective. That's a great insight. To start with more ideas. I would just add, because in my new book, Power Teams Beyond Borders, I was exploring not just the business world, but also the communities which get together in order to tackle the toughest challenges of humanity. So even some businesses get more flat hierarchies. So I think there should be a bit of a natural selection, facilitated process. The top management can really have the funnel a bit more free, but there is also a process of not just killing by the management, but like self-selection. If you get enough followers, your ideas, if you are kind of inspirational enough, your idea would live and fly. If you can't, there could be a criteria. Instead of killing, you could put criteria about followership, about some wins and so on. So it is really to set the rules in a fair way. So the ones that get the traction, that get the resonance, that get the passion and excitement, they would continue. And it happens. It happens for example, in Germany, many of the mid-sized companies are trying to be more flat. And to run a flat organization, you have to have such processes of self-selection and so on. And in the I know you are a big fan for, Kimberly, for a better world, and all you do is not just for the business, but for a better world. I mean, this process there is even more relevant.
Well, sure. Well, I mean, I strongly believe that businesses exist to solve problems and global businesses exist to solve global problems. And you must solve these problems profitably in order to solve them next year. So I think that profit allows a business to continue fulfilling its purpose. So I don't mind making money. That's great. That allows a business to continue to serve humanity in the future. Of course, I do object to a lack of ethics, but I don't do business with companies that are unethical, of course, right?
Yes. So we are approaching with two more questions from me. One is, let's look at the future a little bit. What do you think now with COVID and everything? What is the future of virtual teams and remote working?
Oh,
Remote
Peter,
working.
you're talking to a person who used to travel 90% time. I used to be on an airplane every month. Even recently, after I gave away half of my work, I was still traveling half time. Now I can do all of my work from home, and I'm totally surprised at how much I can do and how effective it can be. And one of our big clients, and I won't say the name, but one of our big clients who would be known globally recently converted a 3-day in-person leadership workshop therapy
Mhm.
into 6 4-hour sessions over 5 weeks.
Yep.
And they said when we did the debrief, you know what, Kimberly? After each session, we went back and practiced. We got more ROI, more impact from having it spread out over 5 weeks. We could never do that in person. And they said, we may never do in person again. And some of the Japanese companies in Tokyo, for example, have gotten rid of half of their office space because they said, oh my gosh, our people don't need to spend 2 or 3 hours a day commuting, and we can save all this money. We don't need it. So I don't think we're ever going to return to the old world of completely face-to-face and live. I think we have made 10 years of IT progress in 10 months.
Yes, yes, I fully agree. What would be your bet on the new normal? I mean, you commented now, but how do you think the new normal would look like in terms of people in the office versus remote work? What would be the key dimensions in the new normal? What's your forecast?
So for the workplace, I think we're going to see a much more openness to completely virtual remote employees who only come together once in a while for some special occasion, and a lot of hybrid workplaces where you come to work a few hours a week or a few days a month. I think that people are going to develop ways to build trusting relationships, set clear goals, hold people accountable in this virtual world. Quite frankly, a lot of managers and executives started off telling me, well, yeah, we have to bring everyone back to work as soon as possible. And then when it was clear that wasn't going to happen, they started to say, well, I mean, some people must come to work, but everybody must come at least sometimes. And then after a few months, they were saying, you know, this person never has to come in. They can do all of their work from home. It's just a matter of building relationships, building trust, having clear commitments and accountabilities, and measuring people based on their contribution,
Yeah.
not on how many hours they spend in the office.
Mhm, mhm. Amazing insights. It's so great to have you. How to end this podcast in an exciting way? Tell
I
me.
would love it if people would somehow pick up a copy of my Scrappy Project Management book.
Mhm.
It
Will
has
do.
practical advice. It's on Amazon, it's on Kindle, and I would be very happy to be contacted by people who said, Kimberly, I became more scrappy because of your Scrappy Project Management book.
Yes, yes. Just define scrappy for the non-English kind of not native English speakers. What do you put in the term?
It's even hard for native English speakers, Peter.
Yeah.
Scrappy means taking risks and chances and making mistakes and looking a little bit crazy sometimes and doing what's required to get things done. even if it's not in the typical way that people normally do, and saying, woohoo, exciting.
Amazing. So we'll put in the comments, we'll put in the description the link to the book on Amazon and the link to your web page. It's been such an honor and so much joy and laughter to have you as a guest. Let's end up with our gesture. Exciting.
Exciting, Peter.
I look forward to seeing you and thanking you soon.
Thank you, my brother. So good to be with you. Keep hope alive, survive to thrive.
Thank you. And big virtual power hack from us to all the listeners and viewers. And hope you get something useful from this one. And see you by the next episode. Bye now.
Bye-bye.